summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings you're gonna rise up singing, then you'll spread your wings and you'll take to the sky. Until that morning, there's nothing can harm you. With daddy and mommy standing by.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington in gathering and online service. I am Chris Johnson, and I am honored to serve on UUCA's Board of Trustees and as your treasurer. I hope you are here with us and happy to have you here. Ours is a community of various disabilities and gifts, many genders and sexual identities, a community of diverse cultural, racial, and class backgrounds. Whether you've been coming to UUCA for many years or you're new to our community, whether you're here in person or joining us online, I hope you feel welcomed and at home. Whomever you may be, we welcome you to our community. Our theme for the month is widening the circle of concern. This morning's Reverend CTC will be talking about Black History and Black History Month. That Black history is significant. Black history life is rich and full-bodied. Black culture is virtual and vibrant. All these are part of American history. Black history is American history. I invite you to join us this morning after the service for our in-person community hour outside on the ramp. We will also have a virtual coffee hour this morning. If you're joining us from home virtually, please feel free to come to the church after the service in person. Community hour held outside. I hope you can join us so that we can connect and grow with each other. The Zoom link for the virtual coffee hour can be found in the Connections newsletter or in the email reminder you should have received this morning. If you are new to the UUCA and would like to learn more about our community, I invite you to reach out to someone on the ministerial team, Board of Trustees, or someone at the welcome desk after the service. We look forward to meeting you. Before I close this morning, I want to remind you to please contribute to the capital campaign. Your contributions to the capital campaign will ensure that we can pay off the church mortgage. Please also remember to make your pledge payments, which are vital to our continued church operations. Just doing my treasury duty this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning, and I hope you will join us at the gathering hour immediately following the service.
Good morning, church. Not well. Good morning, church. Excellent. Our call to worship this morning was written by my colleague, Christian Schmidt. It is called Wake Up. Let us wake up, not just from Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few drowsy more moments in bed. Let us wake up to the world we actually live in, to its beauty, to its wonder, and also its tragedy and its pain. We must wake up to this reality that not all in our world have what we have, however much or little it is that we have. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied into a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are a part. Excellent tech people. Wake up, stay awake, stay woke. We must stay woke and stand alongside friends and colleagues who are working every day for racial justice and to fight the other injustices in our world. Let us wake up. Let us stay awake. Let us stay woke. And now in this space, awake, hearts open, spirits ready to soar, let us worship and gather in community together.
So we gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. And together, we light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head, I see angels in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
Thank you, Jaelin. That was wonderful. Today's wisdom lesson is called Brown Shoes. Mrs. Beverly wrote the class schedule on the chalkboard every day. 8:30 spelling, 9 o'clock math, 9:45 reports. Sometimes the word surprise appeared on the afternoon schedule. All morning, the students would wonder what the surprise could be. Free time, a field trip, maybe some food. One morning, the surprise began as soon as the school day started. It was something the students never would have guessed, and it wasn't even written on the schedule. Mrs. Beverly simply announced, "People who wear brown shoes aren't as smart as other people. They aren't as hardworking or as well-behaved. In fact," she went on, "people who don't wear brown shoes are better than people who do." Colleen looked around at her classmates. Was her teacher playing a game? But Mrs. Beverly's face looked serious. "People with brown shoes don't deserve to sit at the front of the class," Mrs. Beverly continued. "Anyone with brown shoes who's sitting up front must change seats with a non-brown shoed person in back." It wasn't until then that Colleen looked down at her feet. Brown shoes. She was wearing brown shoes, and her seat was in the front row. Stacy, who sat next to Colleen and who was wearing tan sandals, raised her hand. "Should we move our stuff out of our desk?" "What did I tell you about brown shoes brains?" said Mrs. Beverly. "Of course, Stacy. How are you going to do your work without your things?" Colleen was glad she hadn't asked that question. "Come on, brown shoes, we don't have all day," Mrs. Beverly instructed. Colleen grabbed as much as she could carry in one load, hoping she wouldn't drop anything as she traded seats with Stephen, who was wearing gray Nikes. "Don't forget who you are," said Mrs. Beverly, handing each of the brown shoes a name tag that said, "Brown Shoes. And don't lose this, or else." The game continued during reports. Richard, wearing white sneakers, told the class about basketball. Colleen guessed Richard's report had been copied right out of a book. "Excellent," exclaimed Mrs. Beverly as Richard took his seat. "People like you put lots of effort into your work." Then it was Tony's turn. He was wearing brown Oxfords. Tony talked about snakes, and afterward, Mrs. Beverly remarked, "I guess that's all you can expect from a brown shoe." Next, Mrs. Beverly called on Stacy. Stacy began speaking, but Mrs. Beverly interrupted. "Why do brown shoes talk so softly you can hardly hear them?" she asked. When Stacy spoke louder, Mrs. Beverly remarked, "We can hear just fine, you know." Nick, who was wearing a pair of black boots, was the last one up. His report was much shorter than the others. "Terrific, brief and to the point," Mrs. Beverly commented. Colleen decided to take a chance. "But you told us the report is supposed to last 5 minutes." Nick's was only about 3. "If there's one thing I can't stand about brown shoes," Mrs. Beverly replied, "it's when they act like know-it-alls." Before lunch, Mrs. Beverly sent Colleen to the office on an errand. By the time Colleen returned, the class had left for the cafeteria. "I figured brown shoes would have learned to tell time by now," said Mrs. Beverly. "It's just a game, isn't it?" thought Colleen, who was finally near tears. "I think Mrs. Beverly still likes me." At recess, Mrs. Beverly told the brown shoes they couldn't use the drinking fountain or the playground equipment, and they had to stay off the blacktop. She gave them a catcher's mitt without a ball and left them on a muddy corner of the field. None of the brown shoes said anything right away. Finally, Colleen said, "This isn't fair," and everyone agreed. "I'm thirsty," said Stacy, "and I'm tired of this. I'm getting a drink from that fountain." "But brown shoes aren't allowed. You'll get in trouble," said Tony. "I don't care," said Stacy, and she walked over to the fountain. Colleen and Tony followed her. "What are you doing, brown shoes?" asked Stephen, interrupting a softball game. Stacy didn't say anything. She bent down to take a drink. Nick pushed her down. "Brown shoes aren't good enough to drink out of our fountain," he said. "Leave her alone," said Tony, and he pushed Nick back. Back in the classroom after recess, Mrs. Beverly said that the experiment was over. It was time to talk. Colleen was already beginning to understand what the game was all about. Her class had been studying the civil rights period in U.S. history. Not long ago, many people believed white people were better and deserved more than people who were darker skinned. White children and African American children went to different schools. African Americans had to use separate restrooms and drinking fountains, and when they rode city buses, they had to sit in the back. "How did it feel to be treated badly because of the color of your shoes?" asked Mrs. Beverly. "I got angry," said Stacy. "I was scared," said Colleen. "Is it true that people with brown shoes aren't as smart, hardworking, or well-behaved as people who wear shoes of other colors?" asked Mrs. Beverly. "No!" the whole class shouted. "Does having light skin make you a better person than having dark skin?" "No, skin color only affects the way you look," said Tony. Mrs. Beverly continued, "Then is it fair to treat people badly because of the color of their skin?" "No," everyone said again. "You can't change your skin color the way you can change your shoes," said Stacy. "It's something you're born with." "I'm sorry I pushed you, Stacy," said Nick. "I don't know what got into me." On the bus ride home, Stacy said, "I never figured my shoes would bring me bad luck today." Bad luck, thought Colleen. She'd never forget what she learned as a brown shoe. She'd been lucky today. In fact, Colleen realized, she was lucky every day. We have two readings this morning, and the first is an excerpt from Love Beyond God, a collection of poetry and reflections focused on Black identity and liberal religion, written by Reverend Adam Lawrence Dyer. This story was published in 2016, and it's entitled Q. She leaps out into the intersection, more concerned with her ballet arms than with staying alive. Her parents look the other way, with a laugh at some private joke that speaks to their solid intimacy. The little girl skips and dances across the street, wearing shorts that are fine now on an 8-year-old body. But the same shorts and manner may send a different message when she is 20. She's already learning to be unfettered, independent, and free, and so she always will be. You might look at this and say, of course, all children should be this way. But what is the pattern? She's already been told she's pretty. She's already been instructed to look for a prince because she is daddy's princess, whatever that is. And her strong, independent mother still prioritizes him and his over her own needs. The little girl sees and learns. When they walk, as they pass the black man, Daddy places his hand on the little girl in an unconscious gesture, but one that is real just the same. He's unaware, still laughing with his wife, but the little girl gets the cue and looks sheepishly at the black man. She stops skipping. The black man doesn't see the family. He is headed to perform surgery, or lead litigation, or maybe to save the world. No matter. In that moment, he has become black man, permanently connected to the protective hand of Daddy, and the target of a wary stare from underneath the suspicious brow of an 8-year-old who learned her first racial cue. This next reading is a poem. It's by Langston Hughes. And Langston Hughes was a central figure in the Harlem Renaissance, the flowering of Black intellectual, literary, and artistic life that took place in the 1920s in a number of American cities, particularly Harlem. This is his poem, I Too. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am America.
Let's take a breath in and let that out. And one more breath in and let that out. And center ourselves right here for a time of prayer, meditation, and consideration. Source of sources, spirit of justice, God who lives within me, moves around me, and works through me. God who befriends those who stand on the constant edge of decision, feeling crucial, feeling alone. Source of sources, Mother Goddess, we are grateful to be together this morning. We gather here in trying times with the fate of thousands of unnamed women and men and their bodies and their lives on the line across the sea. We gather knowing freedom comes at a cost, knowing that racism and homophobia and ageism and ableism and sexism and classism and pure hate, all of these often go unacknowledged and unnamed. We gather knowing that freedom comes at a cost and often prevents us from fully knowing one another and stops us dead in our tracks when we try to create the beloved community. This morning and all mornings, let us remember those around the globe who have less than we do. Let our lives demonstrate ways to eradicate injustice whenever and wherever we encounter it. Let us continue to speak out against evil and injustice, even if we are afraid our words will not be heard and our opinions may not be welcome. Let us speak out loudly. Let the Spirit come through. Let it flow in our daily living, enveloping us in the courage we need to continue to stand up for justice, to seek out reconciliation and truth, and to fight moving forward, despite these challenging times and the controversies within our borders and across the sea. May our lives continue to eradicate injustice and help us seek freedom. May this all be so. Amen.
Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón, cántale tu compasión, sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta el molde la justicia de la vida. Arráigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassions. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Jaelin. It's really wonderful to have your voice here this morning. In February, 70% of our offering will be given to the Little Friends for Peace. Little Friends for Peace welcomes youth and adults to experience, learn, and practice peace through a variety of peace education programs. They believe that peace education enriches communities by bringing social, emotional learning directly to them. Little Friends for Peace also believes that all people can create homes, classrooms, teams, and workplaces, and lives where everyone gives, everyone gains, and everyone wins. There are many ways to give to UUCA: through our website, by text, the Give Plus app, and by mailing a check. As you're making your donations, please remember that 30% goes to the continuing mission of UUCA, and that in February, 70% goes directly to Little Friends for Peace. So I ask that you give accordingly and consider adding a little extra to your gift this week. And ushers, if you could please take the offering.
Them that's got shall have, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible said, and it still is news. Mama may have and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Yes, the strong gets more, while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grade. Mama may have and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Money, you've got lots of friends crowding round the door. When you're gone and the spending ends, they don't come round no more. Rich relations give crust of bread and such. You can help yourself, but don't take too much. Mama may have and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that got his own.
Just want to let that settle for a moment. Ushers, if you could come forward. We're grateful for the generosity of our congregation in all the ways that you give. We had the Social Justice Summit yesterday, which was really wonderful. And it was good to see so many faces come out and give their time and show interest. We bless and receive these gifts, opening our hearts to true generosity. And join me. Let us be grateful when we give, be it time, talent, or treasure, for giving brings us joy. Let us be grateful for our needs and the experience of vulnerability, for they teach us how to receive in community and love. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts to nurture this congregation, for it is a blessing to make a difference together.
Our second reading this morning has been changed. Initially, I was going to read a piece of poetry from the same poet that Greg read to us earlier today, the piece called Q. Instead, I've decided to read a portion of a book called So You Want to Talk About Race. This is just a couple paragraphs from that book. Until we have made the decision to intentionally dismantle the system of white supremacy and racial oppression, we will simply always have to talk about it. I hope that, to have these conversations about race, we all find opportunities for action and use what we've learned from those conversations to make that action more effective at dismantling all types of oppression. So talk. Please talk. Talk and talk some more. But my goodness, also act, and act now. Because people are now dying in this unjust system. How many lives have been ground up by racial prejudice and hate? How many opportunities have we already lost to move forward? Talk, yes, but act. Act and learn and mess up and learn some more and act again and promise yourselves and others that you will do better. We have to do this. We have to do all of this at once. You see, we have no choice but to learn and to fight at the same time. Because my people have been waiting far too long for their chance to live lives as equal as those others live their lives in what's called our society. Until we've dismantled the system of white supremacy and racial oppression, we will always need to talk about it. From So You Want to Talk About Race. Thank you, Barbara. Before I came out into the sanctuary this morning, I got to speak with Barbara for a minute. And it was one of those conversations that a minister has with the pianist right before a service. So you want some extra music here? Well, what about this? How slow should this be? How quick here? And we came to an agreement. What I've been calling traveling music, those little pieces of music between so many words, actually is breathing music. So what you often hear is a bunch of words, a reading or a poem, and then you hear that music, where the person at the piano goes back to the hymn we just had, or teases you with a piece of the hymn we're going to have. That's breathing music, simply to allow all of us to move onto the same page and get ready for the next thing, to give us some space to breathe in. When I decided to write about why I hate Black History Month, I had no idea the number of emails and questions that would bring up. But before I talk about that, first let me give voice to a few names that are familiar to all of you. Shirley Chisholm, Michelle Obama, Althea Gibson, Hank Aaron, Arthur Ashe, Louis Armstrong and Dizzy Gillespie, Barbara Jordan and Dorothy Height, the poet Langston Hughes, Francis Harper, one that we claim as a UU, rightfully so, Bessie Coleman, Booker T. Washington. the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Oprah Winfrey, Sojourner Truth, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, George Washington Carver, Rosa Parks, Frederick Douglass, Barack Obama. Wonderful people, intelligent people. But most importantly, this month, Black people. Black people whose story needs to be told, whose story is in danger of disappearing unless we continue to repeat their stories. Black people whose story is part of the American story, whose stories all matter. So yeah, this morning, first, I say some of the names. Second, back to the title of the sermon, a disclaimer. I don't actually hate Black History Month. But since we began publicizing that text, that title, I realized it's such a good conversation starter. Not one, not two, not three, but several UUCA folks have asked me about those exact words. Do you really hate Black History Month, Rev CTC? Wow, I imagine it can be hard for you. It's a long month. Oh, but you always say it's only 28 days. I don't understand. Why don't you like it? I mean, it's a way of recognizing your people. I must admit, excellent sermon title. But the real truth is this. I don't hate Black History Month. I dislike the way Black History Month is celebrated, recognizing an assortment of brown-skinned overachievers, while small towns and sprawling cities and corporate America packages the correct, accepted versions of Black history, and then puts it on billboards and the sides of buses and banners and public service announcements. What happens is Black History Month is shilled to the masses. I also believe that Black History Month probably does as much harm as good. It boils down the collective journey of Black Americans into a handful of programs, of specific signage, of concerts. It becomes a 28-day party for Blackness. And then in March, what happens? We put it away till next year, right? We resume the usual state of forgetfulness and denial and the sheen of unimportance. I also know that it would be extremely unfortunate if mainstream America decided that the annual emphasis on this particular segment of the American story was no longer important at all, was not worth our attention, even during the shortest month of the year. So no, I don't hate Black History Month. Instead, like many others, I question the need for Black History Month at all. You know, the rumbling really starts in January, after the end of the year holidays, but before MLK weekend. That's when the rhetoric and the questions about the need for February to continue being designated as Black History Month start to swirl in the atmosphere of radio and TV frequencies and is all over cyberspace. That's when the discussion of whether or not Black History Month is meaningful anymore at all slides from the mouths of the talking heads. The smooth-voiced Anderson Cooper on CNN, the strident preachy tones of Reverend Al Sharpton on MSNBC, the probing patter of Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. All of them ask the same question every January. Is Black History Month significant anymore? Is it actually needed? In that space after New Year's Day, but before Dr. King's birthday, the touchy-feely conversations and the difficult but important questions begin to rear their less than politically correct heads. Is Black History Month really still needed? Is Black History Month actually relevant? Do we even know why we have it or where it began? Should the entire month of February, the shortest month of the year, be designated and marked to honor one specific group of Americans just because of the color of their skin? For me, in that January space, before the preaching on MLK Sunday, the special gospel concerts, the African drumming event, the middle school essay writing contests, that level of murmuring and public disagreement and heated discussion starts to get wearying. Every year in January, in the CVS, at work, on the metro, in the doctor's office, and around the dinner table, of course, people are asking, do we need Black History Month? Oh, and what should we do for Black History Month? How are we going to recognize it this year? There's that conversation with a sense of urgency, like we forgot it was coming, and we really better do something, or we won't look like we know that it was coming. And then there's meetings, there's committees, there's task force, there's recruitment of singers. We have had the most amazing musicians from George Mason who never stepped foot in this building before Black History Month. We made a plan. It's a good plan. But it did happen in January, and we've known this month was coming for a year. That then made me ask the question, well, is Black History Month possibly outlived its usefulness? Has designating February as the time to recognize, honor, and celebrate the perseverance, the intelligence, and the success of African Americans lost its purpose? Sometimes. I believe exactly that. I believe it's lost its purpose. Because Black History Month reminds me how deeply aware I am that the history of Black Americans has been lied about, sanitized, and often left completely out of history books. I know every single day that the full history of the African American experience is not consistently and truthfully being told. We leave out the tough, icky, sticky, blisteringly painful parts because they make us uncomfortable. Our country and its citizens have made tremendous strides. You all know this. Mandatory segregation is a thing of the past. You can't do that in restaurants, in schools, in community spaces, at swimming pools, in movie theaters, or in churches. You can't have a sign above a water fountain that says coloreds only. You can't tell people because of the color of their skin the numerous things they cannot do. But some brown-skinned men and women are still set aside. Even though we've reached the place where they are gainfully employed and working at all levels of small businesses and major corporations, some of them are still set aside. All those things are true. Large segments of the US population understand the history clearly. Larger sections do not. The list of names that I read you at the top of this sermon were all familiar. Althea Gibson, Arthur Ashe, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, George Washington Carver, I love that name, Booker T. Washington. Even though all those things are true and we are recognizing those important men and women, there are so many who don't see the real picture of Black life every day. Instead, they see stereotypes and predetermined ideas about the current life and the deep history of Black Americans. So, while I understand that many believe Black History Month is extremely important and they want to continue acknowledging my ancestors and a seemingly endless list of Black heroes and sheroes, I remain unsettled and unsure about how the month is handled. As a child, a youth, and even as a young adult, February had very little meaning for me. I was not a student of any type of history. I didn't study American history more than they said I had to get out of high school. I didn't study world history more than I had to achieve my bachelor's degree. I thought that my life was in front of me and saw little importance in looking backwards. I didn't care about history at all. And if possible, I actually felt less about Black history, that singular moment in time that was supposed to mean so much to me. My life also wasn't connected to particularly painful experiences of racism, of my people being underrepresented or isolated or not included or discriminated against over and over and over. So I lived in a bubble, on military bases, and then on suburban cul-de-sacs. Also, my age plays a factor in my lack of connection. I was 6 when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Between that, I basically, I played, skipped, and hopscotch through the whole civil rights movement. In my life, integration had arrived. It was real. I received a mixed, not separate but equal, but a mixed education. I lived in a decent suburban home. I had friendly white neighbors. Things were pretty well, they were pretty equal. Even when I was the only Black kid in the classroom, I honestly don't remember being called names, other than about my size, because I was a tubby kid. And I was the funny, chunky Black kid. I didn't feel hopeless or powerless. I didn't grow up blaming the unknown, all-seeing man for the conditions of society. Frankly, painfully for me to remember now, I didn't think about the centuries of my people's oppression or believe we needed a month-long celebration to talk about it or not talk about it or to overcome it or to make us all feel better. That was as a child. And then the thing happened, right? I grew up, I got married, we had children, 2 gorgeous biracial children. Their handsome white father and me sat and looked at these babies and were like, oh, what are we gonna tell them? What's the real story? When my children entered the world and we started telling them the stories, when they came home from school, we realized what they were learning at school wasn't the stories they were learning at home. There was a huge disconnect. There was a year when my son wore a peanut costume in the school play, George Washington Carver, and asked questions about the way Black folks used to be treated. They loved his costume. They did not care for his questions. There was the year that my daughter decided to enter a contest to draw a picture that would be on the side of the bus. When she made the person in the picture, a soldier in an army helmet, lighter than the darkest brown crayon in the Corolla box, they asked her to change that. Fine picture, but can you make him a little browner? And she took her entry back and tore it up. What she was learning at home did not jive with what was happening in school. I had to admit to them every single day, in one way or another, that racism was not just in the past, that our country was terribly broken, and that the color of their skin mattered more to some people than it probably did to them. I had to connect the dots for my kids between Frederick Douglass, MLK, Barbara Jordan, and Julian Bond. I had to explain that jazz was uniquely American and created by African Americans. I remembered the summer I introduced my daughter to the poetry of Langston Hughes and Billie Holiday's powerful, painful song about the strange fruit that hangs from trees in the South. What I learned from them was that you can't figure out who you are without paying homage and learning about where you came from. We, and I am using we in the broadest sense possible, we as a people can't determine how we arrived here at this horrible, excruciating intersection we are living in without looking backwards and acknowledging where we came from. Without studying the entire story, including the parts we would rather not see, feel, or re-experience, we can't begin to right wrongs and write the next chapter of our shared story if we don't look backwards first. The way that Black History Month is celebrated now is problematic. By honoring this odd assortment of overachievers, while businesses and well-meaning local, state, and national government agencies do their very best to publicize the importance of Black History Month with accompanying concerts and staged readings and sermons like this one, we miss the boat. The problem is this: sitting aside 1 month a year does just as much harm as good. We pay a very steep bill for distilling the entire journey of a people down to a handful of names and repeating them over and over in a 28-day cycle. At the end of February, things will go back to normal. We'll resume our normal state of semi-indifference and overwhelming forgetfulness for another year. The way that we have chosen to handle African American History Month actually, I'll say it again, does more harm than good. But I'm not hopeless. I think we can find and build a better way, a way of telling the whole truth, the ugly story of slavery and racism and colored-only signs, the truth about affirmative action and how it worked and it didn't work, the story of not being able to buy a home because of predatory lending practices. We can also mix in Oprah Winfrey's success story and the hope all of us felt when Barack Obama became the first Black president in our country. We can honor, we can acknowledge, we can affirm, and we can remember. Even the hurt can be remembered. But we cannot simply decide only to talk about Hank Aaron or Bessie Smith or Barbara Jordan. In the same way that I have watched the Jewish community and culture pledge to never forget the near destruction of their people by Hitler and the condoning silence that surrounded him, it is imperative that we too remember the agony, the suffering, the sacrifices, and the successes of our ancestors. It's in critical condition this Black History Month. We need to figure out how to fix it. We've got to publicly remember the lives lost alongside the success stories. We've got to weave the good, the bad, the painful, the beautiful together into an intersection that makes Black history American history. So do I hate Black History Month? No. Do we really need a Black History Month? Yes, more than ever. But if we're going to continue setting February aside, we can and must do it better. We must do it better. I'll say a line you've heard me say before. Our children are depending upon it. The stories we have heard and reheard are not enough. We have work to do. We are capable and able of making the shift. I'm going to close this morning with a poem that was crafted by Poet Laureate Maya Angelou. She titled this poem, Human Family. It's one of my personal favorites. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious. Some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight. Brown and pink and beige and purple, tan, nearly blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who were exactly the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts when lying side by side. We love and lose in China. We weep on English moors. We laugh and moan in Guinea. We thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways, we differ. In major, we are the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Yes, we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Say that last sentence with me. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We cannot prosper. We cannot live in peace. We are, in the end, inescapably involved in one and others' lives. Racism, classism, ageism, heterosexism, other oppressions are not going to simply disappear. You know and I know we have work to do. I am hopeful. Let's get busy. Our destiny is on the precipice. The idea of living fully and joyously in the beloved community is not lost. Oh my gosh, it's waiting for us to claim and take the steps to get there. Amen, and blessed be.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Fogarty, and I've So much I would like to say. I know I only have a few minutes, so let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Among the various activities I've been involved in here, I want to highlight two of them. Along with Alan Kieswetter, I was co-chair of the 2010 Capitol campaign, which was a remarkably meaningful experience for me. And it's meaningful to me every time I get to walk through a paved parking lot. But my most fun activity at UUCA involved telling stories. Back in the day when we had children's chapel every Sunday, I would tell stories to the children from kindergarten to 6th grade. And over the years, I've enjoyed telling stories in worship services. So let me tell a bit of a story today from A Christmas Carol. So when I was asked to do a Capitol campaign testimonial, I was thinking, well, gee, as the past Capitol campaign chair, I kind of feel like I'm the ghost of Christmas past. Which is really a good thing, right? Because the main role of the ghost of Christmas past is to show Scrooge memories of his past, to remind him of the goodness of the people he loved and who loved him when he was young. But then I started thinking about the other ghost. You know, the ghost of Christmas present is a jolly old ghost, reminding us to celebrate the moment. There's a wonderful scene where everybody's getting ready in the market for Christmas dinner, and we get to see the Cratchit family. We see a happy Tiny Tim in a happy family setting. And then, of course, there's the ghost of the Christmas yet to come. This ghost reveals to Scrooge the possible consequences of his past and present actions. This ghost reminds Scrooge that his current actions will have an undeniable impact on the future. By the way, A Christmas Carol is a really good book. I encourage all of you to read it sometime. I know there are lots of different film versions and cartoon versions, but I recommend reading the book. And I want to share with you a quote from the end of the book, when Scrooge is talking to one of the ghosts. And this quote reminds me why my wife Elizabeth and I have participated with our whole heart and with our funds in the present campaign and the past campaigns. Scrooge said, "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach." I really like this quote, that it's good to live in the past, present, and future. And I'm thinking of Reverend CTC's sermon today. We're saying it's important to look backward first. It's good to learn from and appreciate the past. And let us learn from the ghost of Christmas present. Let's celebrate and enjoy the present moment with one another, to be in community together. And let us learn from the ghost of Christmas yet to come, to remember our current actions do have consequences for the future. And of course, this is where I make my pitch for the Capitol campaign, for everyone to participate in it. Our efforts today, our efforts this year with this Capitol campaign will shape the future. Let's get 100% participation with the Capitol campaign. I ask you to please give, and please give as generously as you can. On your way out today, you can pick up some information and even schedule a visit. We really need every one of you. And in closing, to paraphrase the words of Reverend Amanda last week, all of us need all of us to make the future. Thank you.
This morning has drawn to its close. The hymns have been sung, the words have been spoken, the chalice lit, soon to be extinguished. What will you take from this moment in time? What will you take out into the world? Curiosity, grace, compassion, grief, shame, perhaps new understanding. Whatever you take, do not hold it close as if it were a secret. Do not treat your feelings as if they cannot be shared. Share them, speak them, experience them. Go out in the world and tell someone what happened to you at church today. They do want to know. And then next week, invite them to come with you. It would be good for them to be here too. Share what you've learned, speak your truth, go into the world and change it. Blessed be, move into the week with love.